Title: The Final Forecast. In the underbelly of a bustling metropolis, where skyscrapers pierced the clouds and the streets never slept, Tony Marlowe lived as though he had conquered life itself. With a thriving tech startup that catapulted him into the realms of the ultra-rich before his 30th birthday, Tony's days were a blur of opulent parties, high-stake deals, and the ceaseless adoration of the public. He was a man who wielded arrogance like a finely tuned instrument, charming and disarming in equal measure. One overcast afternoon, as Tony sauntered through the financial district, a peculiar event unfolded. The sky, heavy with the promise of rain, instead released a flurry of papers. Sheets of newspaper, as it seemed, spiraled down in a surreal dance, littering the streets with whispers of tomorrow. Curiosity piqued, Tony caught one, smirking at the absurdity of the weather. The paper felt oddly warm, the ink fresh, almost wet. As his eyes scanned the page, his smirk faded to a frown. The paper was dated 1 year into the future, and there, under the headline, was his own obituary. Tony Marlowe, tech mogul, dead at 31, it declared. The date of death was exactly 1 year from today, marked at 3:17 p.m. A chill ran down Tony's spine as he read the cause of death: a fall from great heights. The details were disturbingly specific, recounting his last moments at the office on the top floor of Marlowe Tower, his namesake and pride. Shaken, Tony's arrogance crumbled. He spent the following days in a haze of dread, his usual haunts and pleasures turning to ash in his mouth. Friends and colleagues noticed the change, attributing it to stress or a secret venture gone wrong. Tony confided in no one, the paper's prophecy gnawing at him like a relentless specter. As the year slipped by, Tony withdrew from the limelight. He divested from risks, seeking safety in solitude, his once vibrant world now a fortress against fate. His towering office felt like the mouth of an abyss, and he avoided it, working remotely, living quietly. The fateful day arrived with an oppressive weight. Tony decided he wouldn't cower. He would face it head-on, in his tower, at his office. If fate was to have him, he'd meet it on his feet. He spent the morning in somber reflection, reviewing his life, his successes, and the myriad relationships he had trampled in his ascent. Regret, a new companion, whispered of lost opportunities for kindness and connection. 3:12 p.m. Tony steeled himself and entered Marlowe Tower for the first time in months. The elevator ride to the top floor was the longest of his life. As he stepped into his office, his heart raced. The clock ticked closer to 3:17. He approached the panoramic window, staring down at the city that once felt like it was in his palm. 3:16 p.m. The phone rang, slicing through the thick silence. It was his mother, whom he hadn't spoken to in weeks. Her voice, warm and worried, reached out to him, a lifeline thrown across the abyss. "Tony, are you all right? I had this horrible feeling." As they spoke, the clock's hands joined at 3:17. In that moment, a deafening crash echoed as a small plane collided with the other side of the building. The impact was catastrophic, the top floors, including his office, obliterated. Miraculously, Tony survived. He had stepped away from the window to fetch a photo of him and his mother from the desk, an act of reconnecting, of stepping back from the brink. In the aftermath, as he helped with the crisis, his perspective irrevocably altered. Tony realized the true height from which he had fallen. It wasn't from his office, but from his own humanity. The paper had predicted the time of his potential demise, yes, but it was his choice that ultimately spared him. The lesson was stark, carved into his soul. Life is not just to be lived for oneself, but to be shared with others, with humility and kindness. As he rebuilt his life, he did so not just with bricks and mortar, but with open doors and open arms. Tony Marlowe had thought he knew the date and time of his death, but instead he had learned the moment his true life began.